Welcome and hello everyone who is joining. Thanks so much for coming today. My name is Brooke and I'm very happy to welcome you to today's Peer Recovery Support Services Community of Practice on the topic Enhancing Our Skills, How to Build Good Habits for You and Your Participants. This session is scheduled for a duration of 2 hours and will be interactive with 3 breakout sessions and not one, but 2 speakers. It'll be a great program today. But before introductions, here are some brief housekeeping notes. I think everybody can see it there. We are recording today's meeting, so we ask that you keep your microphone muted when not speaking. If you're having any internet issues, try turning off your video camera or join by phone. If you're having trouble hearing, expand the audio icon to open the audio settings. And here you can select a different speaker from the menu or adjust the volume. We also encourage you to use Zoom's engagement tools at all times freely. You can use the chat, which is available for all to participate in, and you can use reactions throughout the session. When our presenter opens the floor for questions at any time, you can raise your hand by clicking on reactions and selecting raise hand. Additionally, certificates will be provided for attending today's session. To receive yours, please be sure to stay to the end and complete the evaluation, including your name. Now I'll turn it over to Lena, who will introduce our speakers today.
Thanks, Brooke. We have 2 speakers. Our first speaker, Michelle Lennon, is president and CEO of Archways, a recovery community organization that has recovery centers and family resource centers in central New Hampshire. She has worked in the field of family support and strengthening for over 20 years, integrating peer recovery support into her practice over 10 years ago. She founded an RCO that grew to 4 sites and over 20 employees and is a recognized trainer both local to New Hampshire and nationally. She has earned multiple awards, including a Legacy Award from the New Hampshire Children's Foundation for the work of addressing recovery support in the context of family. She recently spent 2 years in a coaching program for developing fit and healthy leaders, where the art and science of habit creation was an area of focus. And our second speaker today, Troy Barnes, for the past 2 years, he's been working as a recovery coach and manager at Whitehorse Recovery in North Conway, New Hampshire. Although he already had years of sobriety under his belt when he came to Whitehorse, this career change marked a significant turning point for Troy. Before finding his own recovery, his life was dominated by substance abuse, incarceration, and wasted potential. Finally, after years of addiction and barely surviving overdoses, Troy was able to turn his life around, but was soon facing new challenges. He was stuck working dead-end jobs and grew increasingly isolated. That all changed when he completed recovery coaching training and began working at Whitehorse Recovery. Troy is grateful and proud of this opportunity to help others discover their own hidden potential. Thank you, and I'm going to hand the floor over to Michelle, our first speaker.
Hey, thanks, Lena. All right, so today we're going to be talking about how to build good habits, and not just for our participants, but also for us. And I think if we walk through the process for ourselves when we try to add some new habits, it helps us be better coaches, actually. So we're going to start here. The objectives today is to understand what a habit actually is, to recognize the 4 stages of a habit, and understand the 4 laws of creating good habits, which is actually behavior change. And then we'll talk about how this applies with our participants. I need a clicker, I guess. I don't know. Paul, I don't know who's doing the PowerPoint. There we go. So the first breakout, we're going to send you out to come up with a consensus definition to the question, what is a habit? And hopefully you'll have some good discussion around this, because in working with that program, Fit to Lead, it was interesting what I thought a habit was and then what it actually meant in my life. So we'll send you out in those groups now. Everyone understand? All right. What is a habit?
Great. We put the question there in the chat, and the breakout rooms will open right now.
All right. Who wants to share what their group came up with for a definition of what is a habit?
Kirk does from group 6.
Kirk?
Really voluntold in the group and then voluntold outside. Okay, sure. Yeah, I think while we didn't come up with like a specific, I think some of the key words that I think we could take away, like it's routine, it's automatic. You don't have to think about it, you just do it. And we had like a good conversation about oftentimes it's like fix it, like it's providing like an immediate need sometimes. Like I'm tired, I need my caffeine right away. I'm not thinking about it. So that's kind of what we thought about.
All right. Somebody else?
I can go for our group. We talked about it being like some people talked about like being a ritual or something that you do without even thinking. And we've thought about like when we think of habit, we can think of like a good habit or a bad habit, but we're already doing so many things that are habits, like waking up in the morning and taking a shower and going to work. And just that it's like behavior change
Okay.
when trying to create or break one, but we've already been doing so many that's already in our little pathways that we're not even conscious of the things that we're doing.
Agreed. A
Okay.
lot of them are subconsciously just done, right?
All right. Let's go to the next slide. So this is some definitions, right? A habit is a routine behavior or practice that is repeated regularly, often unconsciously, activated by a cue and reinforced by a reward, becoming an automatic response that's hard to change but crucial for self-improvement and self-destruction. So the automatic piece is where I got hung up in my work with a coach and where I needed a coach. I was working on some habits, trying to eat healthier, like exercise. I hate exercise, like trying to get some of this into my life. And I never could get to the automatic. And so I was consistently feeling like an incredible failure in trying to create some new habits. And so, in thinking about working with participants, this was kind of like an epiphany for me because I didn't often understand why it was that some people I would be supporting did really well in developing new habits and some did not, right? And so I needed help in one area of life. And I thought, wow, everything that I learned from the fitness project was really helpful for me to understand where we might have some impact on people that are really struggling to create new habits in their lives. All right, next slide. Paul, it makes me nervous when you're looking away. All right. So everyday actions will often determine how life goes for us, right? So you think about the little habits that we create, and you mentioned some that are automatic. I happen to have attention deficit wiring in my brain, so there are many things that people think of as habits that I do not possess as automatic things. Like I do not automatically think to brush my teeth every day the way most people might. I actually have to have some systems in place to make sure that I brush my teeth every day. But the thing is, when we look at small gains, creating good habits, small little changes can have huge impacts over a lifetime. And James Clear wrote the book Atomic Habits. I tell everybody to read it. And he talks about this because if you can just get 1% better every day as you work to implement a new habit, by the end of the year, you're 37 times better by the time you're done. So it's that 1% effort, that can make a huge difference in life. Next slide. So some of the habits that I was looking to change was physical, right? Like I would like to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night. One of the things I found out, there's a correlation between heart disease in women if you get less than 7 hours of sleep. And I was diagnosed with heart disease a year ago. And I was like, well, it's because I don't sleep. So I was like seriously looking at that. Moving your body, walking, stretching, strength, play, all of those things. Again, I hated exercise. So it was like, how do I get it into my life? Because I paid a lot of money for a personal trainer and it was all right for a while, but my work schedule kept causing me to cancel it. So then I just felt like it was a waste of time and money because I couldn't get the exercise in. Eating, I used to tell the vendors, stop bringing freaking cookies and donuts into our centers because what would happen is I would miss breakfast and then all of a sudden, our favorite vendor would come in with a box of donuts and then I would be looking at eating donuts for lunch when I knew it was completely unhealthy. So there was a lot of things that were not going in my favor and trying to create new habits around physical health. And these are just some examples. Next slide. When we think of creating habits, we should be looking at the domains of wellness that SAMHSA puts out. And these are just some of the areas. And we often are supporting our participants, in the initial stages of recovery coaching or peer recovery support services at initiating recovery and then sustaining it in that action kind of stage. We get caught up in crisis management, and sometimes we start losing people as they have kind of started to stabilize. But if we can consistently work on creating new habits with people, we can kind of hold on to them longer and see them make better progress so that they go just, from a place of sustaining recovery to actually thriving in life, if we're looking at all 7 domains of wellness. So mental emotional habits, another example. Next slide. I'm just going to go through these quickly. Social relational habits, maintaining strong supportive relationships. We know that that's a protective factor for people. And so that's another area that we might be able to create some new habits for people or support them in creating them for themselves. Next slide. Daily routine, lifestyle habits. There's so many things that we know are good for us that we don't necessarily do. And there are so many ways that we can support people in developing new habits around daily routine and lifestyle. It's funny, but like until I put my exercise on my Google Calendar, it never happened. And I just never realized that I actually had to carve out time for it and move it forward if for some reason that time is co-opted by something else. Getting outside. And I know our centers have really put some serious thought into how we could, support staff in doing some of this, but a lot of it's up to us, and we often are supporting people that don't necessarily have the skills to create habits in a way that is going to be doable for them. So it's important that we take our coaching skills and kind of apply it to these areas when people are trying to work to improve their habits in life. Next slide. Another example would be preventative and long-term health habits. We often don't talk about avoiding tobacco in the centers. It just seems like a lot of people still smoke when they're working with us. We have staff that probably still smoke in our centers. But when we talk about moving forward with a healthy lifestyle, we know that tobacco and alcohol still kill more people in New Hampshire than most other sources of substances. And providing education, like we do that, but sometimes we're not talking about how do we create new things to kind of substitute that are healthier coping mechanisms for what people go through. Managing finances responsibly, reducing chronic stress, things like this. These are just all areas that potentially we could be focusing on with our participants or for ourselves. Next slide. Spiritual, purpose-driven habits. These can be optional, I think, but they can be very powerful. And we've been doing more of this, having people reflect on their values, what their purpose is. Some of somebody mentioned rituals, and when we talked about what a habit is. But one of the things that we find when people start working on things that are connected to core values, what are the most important things to them, and then connect those things to the new habits that they're striving to create, it can be really powerful and kind of start building that intrinsic motivation that we want to see people have. I know for me, it's like I said, I hate exercise, but I love my daughter and my son, and I definitely want to be here when my kids have grandchildren. And, when you're diagnosed with like heart disease and actually pre-diabetes at the same time, all of a sudden you realize there are a lot of people my age that are already dead of these exact things. And so all of a sudden my goals began to align more with my desire to be here for my daughter than it was about getting on the treadmill. So again, when we're working with people, reflecting on what's important to them, looking at their core values, what their purpose is in life, and align those things with habits that they are trying to create for their lives can kind of build that intrinsic motivation. Okay, next slide. So when we think about this, healthy living isn't about doing everything. It's about doing a few things consistently. Small habits practiced daily shape long-term health far more than occasional big efforts. And that was another mindset that I had. I was like an all or nothing kind of person. Like if I was going to get a personal trainer and go to the gym, that's what I was going to do. And I would do it all out for a while. And I think Mia's here. We used to go to the gym together. We used to see the same personal trainer. But it's like over time, like work would interrupt it. I would miss a session. And like eventually I'm like, I can't even do it. I can't get there. Um, but in working with the fitness project, what I realized is that I didn't have to go to the gym to do the exercises. They didn't have to be done at a certain time of day. If I just consistently got in my 15 minutes at some point during the day, then I was doing good. If I just, carried my water with me, and I went from being completely dehydrated all the time to trying to drink half my body weight in water, in ounces, a day. And it became this like slow integration of these small changes that helped me get to a place where I was no longer pre-diabetic. So I saw the power of it in learning to do this integration and in creating new habits. But I had to lose some mindsets, the all or nothing kind of attitude, because, it's like once Andy showed up with the donuts, well, I already blew it today, so it doesn't really matter what I eat the rest of the day, was kind of like what I would tell myself, which is self-sabotage in effect, and we talk about that and we see it among our participants. But with information about how the habit cycle works, we can help kind of identify and come to awareness of where we can maybe do some coaching intervention, to kind of help people as they develop these new habits. All right. So, I mentioned the eight dimensions of wellness. Definitely worth looking at these things because, once people have stabilized their recovery, there's a whole lot of areas of life that contributes to our wellness. It's not just about addiction health, and we know that. But this gives us a framework to work with when we're working with our participants, looking at the eight dimensions. All right. So we're going to do a small group exercise, and think about what is a habit you'd like to add to improve to your well-being. And, don't go crazy. Like I said, just identify one or two things to keep in mind as we continue the workshop. I'll tell you that drinking water was so difficult for me to integrate into my life in the beginning. I tried so many different things to make that happen. I bought all the cool bottles with like the ounces on it. I would bring cases of water with me. And it was not easy. I eventually got there. But there are so many different things that we can do to, improve our well-being from those eight dimensions of wellness. And so what I'd like you to do is look at the list that's going to be broadcast into the breakout rooms, and think about, is actually, Brooke, is he going to be able to do that? Broadcast the,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep, it'll show right there.
And just think about one or two things maybe you'd like to add as a healthy habit in your life. And then, just kind of talk about it with each other because some of you probably have the habits that other people are looking to integrate into their lives.
Okay, so we're going to open up the breakout rooms now. Everyone will go back where they were before, and you'll very soon see the list on the screen. Okay, let's make sure everyone's back. Good, everyone's here. Go ahead, Michelle.
All right. So what are some habits that came up that you guys are serious about working on out of curiosity? Who would like to share?
I'll share. I'm looking to be early to things, not just looking to be on time. I would love to be somebody who is early to appointments, early to work, early to be at a place and have, less stress about being late.
That resonates with me so much, Allison, because I used to lie to myself and use excuses, and I would program myself by saying I'm not a morning person all the time. Like sometimes we speak curses over ourselves, and I would consistently have frantic mornings. And I would just blame it on my ADD. Oh, I forgot my keys, I forgot my phone, or whatever. Once I made that commitment to getting up a half hour earlier, which is all it took, like my whole morning started better, so that's, yeah, yep,
Allison,
resonates.
on that note, like I grew up, my parents were sticklers of you get there 15 minutes before, no matter what. Whether it's an appointment, work, whatever, you just kind of get in. My husband was awful. Well, my appointment's at 9. I don't have to be there till 9. No, get there 15 minutes. So I'm pretty anal when it comes to that. And then I get there and then I'm waiting, right, for the other person to like get there. And it's frustrating, but it's a good calming for yourself within yourself, to get
Yeah.
there, ready, whatever it is, an appointment, a meeting, whatever. Yeah.
It's
How about
come
you,
up for
Mia?
me recently as something that is affecting people I care about. So I'm motivated to do something about it.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, and it's tough if you live in a household where you have one personality that's fine with being late to everything and
Right.
one that's like you got to be early. Yeah. Do you have any habits? You're doing a lot for your health right now, Mia, right?
Yeah.
As far as your habits, yeah. I
Well,
mean,
we talked about that. Like I said, I have a bag of individually wrapped Kit Kats in my refrigerator. Because don't tell me I can't have it. Man,
right.
don't tell me I can't have it. So I have it, and then it's my choice whether I eat one or not, right?
Yep.
And I choose not to. So it kind of trains your brain in that subconscious, like eat the whole bag. No, and they're still there, and I do every once in a while I'll grab one and it's satisfying. But yeah, once my mind was set to, I was saying I did carnivore for a month just to flush out all the toxins and all that. And then I'm a pretty strict keto. But I do, like, if I want to have an ice cream, I have one. I don't beat myself up like you were saying, Michelle, that's the life I lived, right? Oh,
The
I
all or nothing
had
mindset, yeah.
donuts.
Yeah.
I already had donuts. I might as well eat the rest of the donuts. I don't
The
do
lemon
that
cake.
anymore. I have an ice cream, but oh my God, that was so good. And then I continue the rest of my day as I should.
Yeah. Yeah.
My group and I
Lena.
talked a lot about changing like sleeping habits and chore habits. Um, like instead of doing all your chores on like Saturday and then all of a sudden you waste a weekend day, like let's spreading them out throughout the week. And then healthy sleeping habits. That is such a challenge. It's like especially for people who like to stay up at night, like, but I have to wake up early in the morning. How do I do that?
Electronics needs to be out of the bedroom. That's a big one. And I know for me the phone is a problem, right?
Mhm.
So, I used to tell myself like I need to have my phone on because, if the alarm systems go off at the centers or if an emergency happens, what I what my coach told me is that's maybe true, but it doesn't have to sit on my nightstand so that I'm picking it up all the time. It can sit across the room on the dresser so that if it does go off, I actually have to get up to go get it. And so I'm not picking it up randomly all night long, which is what I had a tendency to do. You wake up and all of a sudden, oh, you're cruising Facebook again or something, you know.
I took
Yeah,
myself
I
off
love these
social media.
conversations because sometimes things that are obvious, you think would are obvious, are not that obvious. Like I will complain about having sleeping problems while I'm drinking my 10th Red Bull for the day. And so you don't think about that until you actually have these conversations. You're like, oh, maybe I should lay off the sugar and caffeine, specifically after 7 o'clock at night,
Yeah, if you're drinking Red Bull after 7, you're not going to sleep, Lena. Right?
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's look at the next slide. All right. So this is where we get into really understanding the habit cycle because really what it is a neurological feedback loop that we can actually reprogram our brains into creating these healthy habits. But understanding how the habit cycle works, I took for granted, there's like pieces of it, like you said, Lena, like I never stopped and thought about this until I worked with a coach. And then all of a sudden it was like, like I said, light bulbs went off, because I think a lot of stuff that we do in coaching comes intuitively. We talk about the art and the science. We might get trained in motivational interviewing, which is the science of it, but we bring ourselves to the table. So, if we don't come with some experience around this stuff, we can't be expected to know it. So we're not translating that information with our participants either. So, as a neurological feedback loop, it was like, say what? Tell me about this, right? And Karen and I actually did a lot of work around this, looking at how we can actually reprogram our beliefs about ourselves. We can reprogram how we think about different things. We don't often recognize the stuff. Like I said, I used to say all the time, I used to excuse myself of my bad behavior by saying I'm not a morning person all the time, right? Well, what does that even mean? And then is it true? Because I used to think about it. Well, I got up for school every day of my life. I get up for work. I got my kids to school, for the 12, well, almost 20 years between the two of them. But so it's like, what's real, you know, and examining some of that stuff was like super helpful in like changing some of my habits. So next slide. All right. So the cycle is also called the habit loop. So if numerous authors have written on this. James Clear happens to be my favorite because he kind of condenses everything into that one book. But there's a cue. So this is what I'm going to say. We are told time and time again, remove the word trigger from our vocabulary in peer recovery support services. There are reasons for that sometimes we don't recognize. So we keep using it thinking that, well, what does it really matter, right? When we talk about a trigger, the thought of once the bullet comes out of the gun, it can't be stopped comes along with that image of trigger. We're told not to use it because of suicide prevention, because of the image of violence that can project, right? But think of it as a cue, right? Something is a cue that gets us into this cycle. Then we have the craving of wanting, and then we have a response, and then we get a reward from the response. So, Lena's Red Bull, the cue may be up, it's 2 o'clock. It's time for me to have a Red Bull. So the time is the cue. The craving is like, I want that caffeine. And then the response is I'm drinking it. And then the reward is, hey, I'm good to go for another hour. So everything has, that becomes habit fits into this cycle. All right. Next slide. So when we talk about the cue, as I said, ditch the word trigger. The cue is the thing that activates something, right? So something that's activated in somebody. So types of things that can activate a habit can be the time of day. It can be a location. It can be preceding events. I can tell you, as much as I hate exercise, I was up to running a half hour a day. I actually had to put my sneakers, my hair tie, and my socks in my sneakers by the door because if I didn't do any of that, if I couldn't find a hair tie, that was an excuse enough for me not to go running. If I didn't have my sneakers by the door, that was an excuse. That was enough of an excuse for not going. So preceding events can also be a cue to get you started in motion in a habit cycle. Seeing my sneakers with my socks and with the hair tie, that was enough of a cue for me to be pretty consistent with that. Your emotional state. I was definitely an emotional eater, and the cue was not what I thought. I thought it was Netflix, which cued the bag of popcorn, but generally speaking, it wasn't. It was usually something, like you had a bad day, and so well, I'm gonna make the popcorn, get on the couch, and do Netflix for I used to binge watch Chinese dramas. But we all have these things, right? So emotional state can be one of them, and then other people can be a cue. Now, sometimes it can be a good cue. You see somebody, you set up, like a walking buddy or something. I just think like I have a friend that I used to go to breakfast with every Saturday. Like I would get up and go on Saturday mornings because I really enjoyed that. Other people can be cues. I mean, for good habits and for bad habits, because we also know that in our work. Next slide. So the craving, you think of the word jonesing, we've heard that before, but it's really what it is that strong wanting or desiring. The strong motivation behind every habit is the underlying perceived need or activator, right? The anticipation of reward for the activator, and then the actual reason the activator exists, right? So it can be the craving for chocolate, the craving for a Kit Kat, the craving for the Red Bull. It's that strong wanting or desiring, whatever the thing is. Next slide. And then the response is the actual action that we take, right? So that's the behavior that we actually perform in response to all of that, right? So it's the physical or mental act that delivers the reward that we're seeking, the physical or mental act that we anticipate to deliver the reward we're seeking. Because, a lot of things feel rewarding in the moment, but can, create a lot of dissatisfaction afterwards. I mean, I know for me, like, I used to say, like, I don't have the willpower to turn down the donuts, right? So it's like the craving is so strong that I am like in that cycle that I felt like I just give it to me, and that's how I would get. And then I would feel awful after the fact because now I've, just kind of self-sabotaged my own goals, right? So it can be that the anticipated reward versus what the real reward is. The physical and mental act that satisfies the craving is basically what we're after. So that's our response, the action that we take. All right. So the reward is the payoff, right? This is reinforces our identity, not just dopamine. So this is important too, because identity change really is behavior change. And I talk about this a lot that another reason why we don't refer to people as addicts, right? Because when people refer to themselves as addicts, they align with that identity. Whereas if they are identifying themselves as a person in recovery, a parent, a law-abiding citizen today, all of those different things, it reinforces that identity. When we think about the rewards of the habit cycle, it is going to affect our dopamine. So it's important that we attach rewards to habits that we're, the good habits that we're trying to create in our lives. Because honestly, like drinking water, all day long doesn't really hit my reward circuits, very well. But knowing that, this is going to make me healthier and increase my longevity, does remind me that it's a good thing to do. And my goal is to be here for my kids for a while, so the reward sometimes has to be recreated and attached to other things than the thing that we're actually trying to incorporate into our lives. All right. Next slide. All right. So imagine what it would look like if every habit you practice lined up with your personal mission statement, your core values, your goals for where you want to grow in life, and you have the skills to grow those habits. Because that was the piece that I was lacking, is like I didn't really have the skills to implement the things that I was having trouble implementing, right? And recognizing that it's a process, because sometimes you make all of these attempts, you start implementing different things and you have kind of results. But it takes time. In my case, like I needed a coach to kind of point out where I was like, where I was struggling, what was challenging me, and where my mindset had to shift, where my beliefs were maybe a little bit off track. And it's a process, right? And I think, when we work with our participants, we know, recovery is a process, it takes time. And finding what works, it doesn't always happen right away. But it's more than about being more productive. And that was the other thing that I think was a mindset that I had. Well, I just have to do more. I just have to get a personal trainer. I just have to show up at the gym, and it wasn't that at all. Really what I had to do was get to the heart of my identity of what it meant to be a fit and healthy leader. Because a fit and healthy leader is not going to suck down donuts for lunch every day. A fit and healthy leader is going to make different choices as different choices were put in front of me. Because then I'm asking the question, what would a fit and healthy leader do all the time? Because that's what aligns with my identity that I was after, right? So this creates goals about building the person you want to be. and habit mastery will improve your skills as you support participants in better recovery planning. Because when you have people that want certain things, but they're struggling to get there, when you understand the habit cycle and have the information to support your participants around this, it can really translate into much more, into better outcomes, basically, into better outcomes. Yeah. All right. Next slide. All right. So we're going to talk about the four foundational principles of creating a good habit. So this is the skill piece, right? So I could understand the habit cycle, and I recognized after some time that I could surf the urge, so to speak, because a craving will only last for so long, and I can distract myself now. Like I have skills around that, but understanding these four principles really led to some big changes for me. And Katie just put in the chat that this ties nicely to the session on creating personal mission statement. If you didn't see that, Kara was phenomenal and actually talked about how you can even do your personal values assessment on that to help connect participants to things that are important to them. But this goes into really how small steps can have a big impact, that we still want to make things simple, realistic, and doable for people, and that we're looking for consistency over perfection. So kind of like what Mia was saying with some of the new habits that she's implemented in her life, it's not that she doesn't have the Kit Kat, it's just that she's making a conscious choice now about having that Kit Kat, enjoying that Kit Kat, but not sabotaging her goals by eating the whole bag, you know? Consistency over perfection. All right, next slide. All right, so make it obvious. This is the number one rule of creating a new habit, and this will take some prep work, right? So I mentioned, drinking water was a big one for me. Making it obvious meant that I like after a lot of like hit and miss trying to add water into my life. I had to make it obvious. So I set water bottles on my nightstand. So it was one of the first things that I did when I got out of bed is to drink that water, right? I take vitamins in a bottle of water every day. That sits on my kitchen table. And it's, again, obvious. I can't walk through my kitchen without seeing that stuff on my kitchen table, making it obvious. I have water bottles in my car. We have water bottles at the office. And it's easy enough to drink the water if I don't have to do it all at once. And I can do it, throughout the day. So having it obvious in different places that are in my life all the time became very important. I mentioned the running shoes, right? Having it right by the door, socks, hair tie there, and actually my headphones too, already charged. That was another important thing. Doing that prep work of making something obvious, super, super important. Because, I mentioned before that the systems to me were much more important than this idea of it becoming automatic. These things are not automatic to me. If I didn't have the systems in place to create these new habits, they wouldn't happen. All right. So doing the prep work of making it obvious, number one. Next slide. So what it means when we talk about making it obvious, design your environment so the habit is easy to see and easy to remember. And why it works is we're much more likely to do something when we are reminded of it. It's not that I was willfully being disobedient and not drinking water, It was basically I just wouldn't think of it. So habits often fail not because of a lack of motivation, but because we forget or don't notice the cue. All right. So it's like when we don't see it, it's like out of sight, out of mind. And a lot of us probably have, seen that in our own lives before. Okay, next slide. Some examples. I mentioned the water, leave a water bottle on your desk to drink more water, put walking shoes by the door, set a reminder or a visual cue for a new habit. So, put it in your calendar. A key idea is that if you can see it, you're more likely to do it. Does that make sense? Well, some people are nodding. That's good. Next slide. The second is to make it attractive so that you actually want to do it. It's like exercise. Yeah, it was really difficult to make that attractive to me, you know. So how did that happen? Making it attractive, whatever the habit um, is the second rule. All right, next slide. What it means is make the habit appealing so that you actually want to do it. And why it works is the brain is actually motivated by anticipation and reward. When a habit feels enjoyable or meaningful, we're much more likely to repeat it. So this is where, it's important to identify, as Katie had said, going back to the personal mission statement, what do you want out of life? And how does the habit connect to that? What are your core values? How does the habit connect to that? To me, it's like I shouldn't speak it over and over that exercise isn't, attractive to me, right? I should be saying, that I'm working on exercise becoming attractive to me. But, there's also the reality of what we do to make it attractive. So, like walking, for instance, it's much more appealing to me to walk in new places. I get bored if I walk the same route all the time. When I was running, I think the best run I had was in Wellington State Park one day when I just decided to run the trails after an employee function. So there are different ways to make things attractive. Allison, everybody's telling me in the chat that you have your hand up. I can
I
see you.
saw that. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry.
I
It's not a
know.
question, it's actually a statement. So I have to remind myself, and I'm still trying to master this, that when you're trying to put off a habit, right? I have to remind myself that that struggle only lasts so long. And then you have now established the new habit. So I am queen of not mastering that yet in some areas, but once you get to that point, it actually gets easier as down the road. It doesn't last. That initial change is a struggle. It's a pain, but you do get there, right? So I
Yeah.
just getting over
It
that
took me
hurdle.
2 years. It took me two
Yeah.
years of working with the fitness project. I'll say that, and which is so discouraging when you hear, the what do they call them, the netizens or whatever that say, oh, it only takes 30 days to create a habit. Yeah, BS. For me, I never fell into that category. You know, but yeah, like you said, like the more you do it, the more you remember it, I think, comes to mind. But yeah, where the brain is motivated by anticipation and reward, we think about that. How do we make it feel more enjoyable? Walking with somebody else, running with somebody else. I know I used to kid that I listened to my guy from Peloton, when I would go running. It's like he's got an Australian accent and I liked it, and listening to good music, listening to a podcast, it just depends on what the habit is that you're trying to create. But how can you make it more enjoyable? All right, next slide. Yeah, so some examples: listen to a favorite podcast while walking, doing a habit with a friend, pair a habit with something that you already enjoy. I was talking to somebody recently who does some journaling in the morning, and it was a while, it took a while to get that habit into place. But then it was like, okay, they wanted to connect some other things to that, like how do you stack habits. And so when you have something that you already enjoy, you can add reading, in this case, it was to read a book that a friend of ours wrote. It's like, just read 2 minutes a day. And generally what happens when you start the 2 minutes, you do more. So when you pair a habit with something that you already enjoy, that can make it more attractive too. And the key idea is really that we repeat behaviors that feel rewarding. That's the key. So attaching some reward can be helpful. I'll tell you, like a little kid, I have a Velcro board on my cellar door, and I actually have all these little Velcro pieces that has I have a bike at home, I have a rowing machine at home, I have a walking pad now. I just used my little Velcro tracker. And there was something about the little reward of moving my little felt piece over, and that was totally from like a school teacher in second grade that worked with my son. And, but the rewards don't have to be astronomical. It can be as small as just saying, you're a rock star today, you got it done, because your brain will absorb that programming. Next slide. Where are we? 11:32. All right. Third is make it easy, so that you can do it and fit it in. Um, this was where I was totally missing the boat when it came to health and fitness. Was the idea that I was making it much harder than it had to be. Next slide. So what it means is to reduce friction and lower the effort required to do the habit. Why it works is habits stick when they fit naturally into daily life. The easier a habit is, the more likely it is to happen, especially on hard days. All right. So for me, just for an example, 11,000 steps is my goal for any given day. I used to kid that my office was the furthest away from the bathroom, and that's why I got my 11,000 steps in a day up in Plymouth. But what I found is that by the end of most days, I might be a couple thousand short. So at the end of the day, I would just throw a YouTube video on, and Mr. London was the guy that I would watch, and I would do a step workout before going to bed. Um, that was easy for me, much easier than jumping on the treadmill, much easier than going to a gym. Um, it's like fitting it in and making it easy to fit in. Mr. London's free, on YouTube, and I can just cast it right from my iPhone to my television. Um, so making it easy. So I was talking to somebody else who is trying to write, and it's like, okay, make it obvious, make it easy, put it right in front of you. At some point you just have to do the thing. But if there's a lot of friction, it makes it difficult to do. And like for me, I mentioned, running, right? If I didn't have my sneakers and I had to go hunt for them, I was already getting aggravated, right? If I didn't have my socks with my sneakers and I had to go home to get my socks, like it's not happening. If I don't have a hair tie, I'm not running without a hair tie. It's not happening. So it's like, just getting into the habit of putting those things together by my back door. I could grab them if I was, not going to be home, or if I was going to be home, be able to, throw everything on. So when it fits naturally into daily life, you're much more likely to do it. So going to the gym wasn't fitting. So I had to figure out what I needed at home to get the exercise in. Like we should be doing strength training a couple times a week. We should be doing a little bit of cardio. For longevity and health and keeping our mobility and stuff, especially when you get to be my age into your 50s, like it's super important. So it's something to really think about when you're creating habits, because if it's not easy, it's less likely to happen. Next slide. So, oh yeah, and this is a really good suggestion too. Start with 2 minutes instead of 30. That was the other thing, like that all or nothing mindset that I had, is that I have to do 30 minutes of exercise a day. Just focus on the first 2 minutes, because chances are, if you get into the first 2 minutes, you're going to finish the 30. But if you stop thinking with the 30, sometimes that just feels too overwhelming for somebody. You think of even working with our participants. We talk about choosing simple, realistic goals all the time, but that can even seem overwhelming to people. I know that if they had told me as part of this fitness project that I had to do 30 minutes of exercise every single day, I would have told them, yeah, the same for me. I started doing just 10 minutes a day, and that's 10 minutes I'm sorry, 3 times a week. That's where I started. And that was good enough, when I began. But even some of my, this year's tasks, starting with 2 minutes, like decluttering my home is my next thing. And I started with 2 minutes on different things, and like my entire bathroom has been done, my entire mudroom has been done, because I start with 2 minutes, and I tend to do a little bit more than that every time I start decluttering, you know. But the idea is that consistency matters more than the intensity. And too often we get that all or nothing mindset where I have to do the whole thing all at once. Um, and that's just not the case. If we can do 2 minutes a day, you'll eventually finish the book, if that's what you're interested in doing. And chances are you'll read more than 2 minutes and maybe even get a chapter done if you just focus on that first 2 minutes. Next slide. And then the fourth, make it satisfying. That sense of accomplishment can't be overstated, because again, it's like we want to feel that reward, right? So make it satisfying, whatever the habit is. Next slide. So what it means is create an immediate sense of success or reward after completing the habit. And why this works, our brains are wired to repeat actions that feel good right away. Even small wins help reinforce the new habit. So again, it doesn't have to be some spectacular thing to make it feel satisfying. It can just be, moving the Velcro tab. It can be just that pat on the back. If you're working towards weight loss, I know for me, I started using the Fitbit app to really scan like the food that I was eating, because diets don't necessarily work. The only way to lose weight is to stay in a calorie deficit for the energy you put out. That's the reality of it. And generally, if you measure what you're trying to improve, you will improve. So when we think about the different ways that we can feel reward, um, after we've gone for a run, it can just be, first of all, it can be, the sense of satisfaction of completing it. Um, but it can also be, something very small that will still reinforce the habit. So even a word to yourself about, hey, did a good job there. All right, next slide. Some examples would be checking off a habit tracker, celebrating those small successes. Notice how your body or mood feels after you completed the habit, because sometimes we don't take the time to be present at the end of the 20 minutes on the arc trainer or something. We just kind of do it. But think about how you feel, because the key idea here is that what gets rewarded gets repeated, so that you have the incentive to go back. All right, next slide. So in your small groups, we're going to ask you to start developing a plan. It's individual work in a way, because you think about what it is that you would like to work on, but you can discuss it with the team that you're with as you develop your plan. We're going to broadcast out an example. Could you show me the next slide just for a second? Yeah, so we're going to broadcast this into the small groups. Just so you can run it through these principles and you have this in front of you. So you want to define the habit you wish to develop and be specific, right? So for me, I mentioned that I wanted to drink half my body weight in water, which was 100 ounces. And this was just one goal that I was working on. I was working on the 11,000 steps. I was working on getting the exercise in. But this just gives you the example of how to kind of work through this process, right? So you run it through the principles, make it obvious, be intentional. I put drink water 4 times a day on my calendar. I had sticky notes on my visor in my car to remind me. I had a Fitbit reminder. I actually had alarms in my phone to say, "Have you drinking at least 3 by this time of day?" I was serious about doing it. Making it attractive. What is your why? And again, this can tie back to your core values. It can tie back to your purpose in life, what's most important to you. What are you after? So making it attractive. For me, like I said, the longevity and like getting I mean, I want to live a lot of years, but I don't want to live it sitting in a recliner watching Jeopardy like my mom did, to be honest with you. And that was like incentive for me to really take a hold of this. So make it attractive, really tying into your why. Make it easy. Again, like I put a case of water in my car, in my office, in my home. I have a Brita pitcher now. I get water bottles filled the night before to have with me for the day. Um, I don't use a tracker anymore because I don't have to, but I did in the beginning. Make it satisfying. Checking off a habit tracker is satisfying. You get a little reward from doing that. Or on your task list to your calendar, or say some positive phrase to yourself, like I kept my promise to myself today. Again, those rewards can be that small, your brain will absorb it. All right, so we're going to send you out into the breakout rooms so that you can take whatever habit it is that you want to work on and run it through these principles. Does everybody understand what we're asking you to do? Yep. Awesome. All right.
Right, here we go, everybody. Enjoy. We'll have 15 minutes to chat. Looks like everybody is back. Go ahead, Michelle.
All right, so who would like to share what their habit was and how they ran it through these principles? Go ahead,
Well,
Kara.
I was gonna say I could share. Um, so exercise is mine, and I decided that I am going to put the stuff in my car because I can either do it here in Belmont or on my way home in Somersworth, because once I get home, I'm not doing it. I am going to I brought new stuff to make it for me. It's all about the look. So I brought new stuff to make it attractive for me. Everything matches. But I'm also going to start off small by like just the treadmill so that way I don't feel overwhelmed. I do like the satisfaction of seeing on my Fitbit how many calories I lost. So that will be my make it satisfying. And I am only going to start off with probably 2, maybe 3 days out of the week. My group helped me. My significant other does counseling on the side Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I don't feel pressured going with him if I go by myself Tuesday and Thursday. And then Saturday, I can spend it with him and then do my other things. So that's going to be my little goal for now, that I said to my group, I will start Saturday.
Awesome. It is crazy the little things that will sabotage you. Like you already know, if I make it home, it ain't happening, right? I've
Right.
definitely felt that way. If my husband's around, it's much less likely that I'm going to exercise at home. Just because I end up talking with him or get sidetracked or we do something together. Or we're not even doing something together and it's my excuse. I don't know. Like, I don't know why that happens that way, but I had to go and find exercise pants that actually had the pocket on the side for my phone, because I found if I had exercise pants that didn't hold my phone, I couldn't listen to the Australian guy talking to me from Peloton on my Fitbit. And Fitbit has a lot of free things that helps with habit tracking, all kinds of things, because it'll do your steps, it'll do your heart rate, depends on what your goals are. Will track your food.
Yeah, I do like it. So I'm gonna use it the way it should be used and not just telling time.
Yeah. All right. Kara, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. My goal I want to work on is spreading out my household chores instead of doing it on the weekend. Uh, because I let my house just become a pigsty over the week and then I don't even want to be there. So to make it obvious, I have a big whiteboard in my, like in hanging up in my living room that I see all the time. So I think using that to help me organize what chores I want to do on what days. To make it attractive, I think it'll be my why is that it'll be a lot more comfortable, like decompressing in my space when I feel like it's clean and comfortable. And to make it easy, I already have like my little cleaning bucket with all my cute cleaning gloves and everything I need in my closet. So it already should be easy. I'm just making it a thing. So spreading it out will make it less of a thing. And to make it satisfying, I will enjoy my hobbies in my home more when I feel like my space is cleaner.
Yeah. Awesome. Anybody else want to share?
I'll share just because
Great.
it gave me a realization just talking through it. So one of my goals, I guess, is to be more intentional about my morning process and wake up instead of going on my phone, reading an actual book. Because if I have a book on my phone, I'm gonna get sidetracked. So reading and then meditating after I've done reading. So nothing huge. I get up 2 hours before I need to even start getting ready for work. So there's literally no excuse. But having everything on my desk organized and ready, um, so that it's attractive and not clutter. And then it is easy because I get up early enough and then I'm like, how do I make it satisfying? I have a Fitbit, but I don't think I can track it. And then I just remembered I have an app called Joy Pilot that literally tracks your morning routine. Oh, my why. My why is so I feel good. Like when I feel good, I want to eat healthy. I drink more water. I can't wait to play my games that get me moving. Like, so for me, it's like that is the biggest why. But yeah, it has meditation, daily gratitude, setting your intent, like all the things I want to do are right here in this app. So now
Yeah.
I remember.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Danielle. Your name
Thank
on screen
you.
is Sarah, but I know
Oh,
you're Danielle.
that keeps happening to us. It's really weird. It keeps switching our names like at random times. I'll fix it.
All right. Anybody else want to share another one? And because we have all different habits, it's helpful to hear these because when we work with our participants, they're all going to have different things that they're working on, right? So it's helpful to hear from different people. Allison?
Yeah. Hi. Oh, which Allison?
So what mine is, if I don't have like a pre-existing appointment that I can use that qualifies to use my wellness hours, I have a tendency to not use them unless it's for an appointment, right? So I am committing to using my wellness hours, and I learned that I can use 24 minutes 5 days a week, and I want to walk. I want to do something for my emotional well-being, my physical well-being. Making it obvious, I'm putting it on my calendar because I'm all about accountability.
Mhm.
And I am allotting, instead of putting 24 minutes, I'm doing an hour, even though I'm not going to use that all for that. It'll be for catch up things or notes that I have to do. But the uh, the key to that is allowing that extra time for when other things happen, like planning for unforeseen events. So
Mhm.
I'm giving myself that hour so that there is no excuse. Somewhere in that hour, I can possibly get those 24 minutes in to do wellness. So I don't know if that's helpful to anybody, but just plan for interruptions.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I have my exercise on my calendar at 8 in the morning and at 5 at night, because I know 8 gives me an hour before I have to be at work, and 5 is the time we're supposed to get out of work. So if I haven't gotten to it during the day, like I know I'm gonna hit it, at the end of the day. Kirk.
A new habit. Geez, I can't even talk. A new habit that I have started to implement recently is reading, finding time to read. I recently just started a master's degree program, which has taken a lot of my free time. So reading is important to me. So what I've done is I have like a 20-ish minute commute to work every day. So I have invested in audiobooks like through Audible or Spotify. So for 40 minutes every day. I get to listen at like 1.3, 1.4 speed. So I'm quickly reading a lot of books, and it's been really wonderful. And instead of giving myself like an hour before bed to read, I'm giving myself that 20 minutes because I've got to allocate more time for another of my goals, which is my master's degree. It's for my personal professional development, and I'm weird. I like to log everything that I call it my consumption list. So any TV, any movie, any book, I keep a log already of what I've read and when I've read them. So that kind of has been helpful for me. So yeah.
Cracking. Very good. All right. We're going to start wrapping this up. Let's go to the next slide, which we already did. So let's go to the next slide. And I will say that vocalizing intention supports your brain latching on to those habits too. So when you speak it out loud, it's kind of like goal setting. You know, we talk about that too. If you speak it out loud, it's going to help you stay connected to those goals. But I wanted to give you some concluding tips after kind of going through this process myself with a number of different habits that I had tried to increase in my life with in the physical domain of life. But again, you know, this will support you and your participants. Next slide. All right. So one of the things that we want to do is be set up for success with new habits, right? So building a new habit isn't about willpower or perfection. And I think we all know that, you know, willpower is it's kind of like a myth, right? It's about designing it's about designing your participants' environment in favor of their goals, you know, and in creating the new habits, their expectations and supports, so success is more likely, right? So if I continue to have the expectation that I'm never going to be a morning person, like I'm not programming myself to get up in the morning a half hour early to have a much more peaceful start to my day, right? So you know, when we think about how this incorporates into our lives or the lives of our participants, I know it's important. Lasting change happens through small, consistent actions practiced over time. So that's important too, that consistency is more important than those big one-time wins, right? Next slide. So start small. Choose a version of the habit you can do even on the hard days. You know, take that 2-minute focus. You know, if it's about reading, you know, you have the book on your nightstand, just focus on getting 2 minutes in. Chances are you'll do more. You know, if you're going for the run, just focus on getting your shoes on. You know, once you get your exercise clothes on and your shoes on, chances are you're going to follow through, right? Make it obvious. Use those visual reminders, cues, or routines that prompt the habit, whether it's post-it notes, the sneakers by the door, the waters all over the place in your environment, having your gym bag in your car on the passenger seat, not in the back seat, because if you don't see it, it's out of sight, out of mind. Make it easy, reduce the barriers and simplify the steps. So again, it's like reducing friction between you and the start of the habit. Reward yourself, celebrate that completion right away, even if it's like that positive self-talk, because the small wins matter. Next slide. Stacking your habits. Attach a new habit to something you already do daily. So Danielle had mentioned that. Like if you're already journaling and you want to start meditation, right after you journal, close your journal and start your meditation. Right? Stacking habits, you know, helps you to be consistent because you're attaching it to something that you're already doing consistently. And focusing on consistency, not perfection. Progress comes from showing up, not from doing it perfectly. Expect setbacks. Missing a day isn't a failure, it's part of learning. Build identity. See the habit as part of who you are becoming, not just something you do, right? So for me, it's like attaching the water and the exercise, the running, all of that was about my identity, that personal mission statement work that Kara led us through of being a fit and healthy leader. You know, being a role model, you know, all those things that were important to me as far as my identity. Ask for support. Habits grow stronger with encouragement and accountability, you know, so you can be that support for your participants. And you can find, you know, accountability buddies at work. I know that, you know, some of us have talked about that at Archways, actually. Next slide. So, some concluding tips. In some cases, when we're working with participants, we're also looking to diminish bad habits, right? And we kind of mentioned this up front. So let's look at some of these ideas. Next slide. Basically, it's inverting the four foundational principles, right? Next, so let's look at these really quickly. Next slide. Ditching the bad habit in favor of the good. The bad habit, you want to put it out of sight. So basically increase the friction, make it difficult to get it done, make it unattractive, make it unsatisfying and unrewarding, so like sticking the phone across the room at night if you're trying to reduce your screen time before you go to bed. It's still in the room if you have to have it because of your job or your kids or whatever reason, but this friction, if you have to get out of bed and cross the room to go pick it up, you're not going to be doing that just to cruise Facebook if you're trying to improve your sleep habits, right? Next slide. Oh, that's it. All right. I was like, oh, we got to stay on time is in my head. Yeah. So that's, some of the things that I had gone through, learning to surf the urge of the craving, in that habit cycle. What I realized when you're aware of the cycle and you become aware that you're living in a cycle with the negative habits, it gives you the opportunity to pause. It's another, I hate that word trigger because there's the implication that once you've been activated, that there's no stopping it, but there is. And when you recognize like you've been activated, for me it was like emotional eating, right? It's like, okay, what can I do to change my state? I can tell myself a new story, I can physically go do something, I can change my focus, and kind of surf that urge until I get to the other side of it, and then replace it with good habits. Go get the glass of water. I have eaten a lot of lemons now because I put lemons in my water all the time to change the flavor. So that's it for me. And Troy is up next, and he's going to talk a little bit about his experience with the first run through of all of this.
All right, what's up, guys? We're gonna do this real quick, so don't worry. Okay, building good habits. I kind of tapped into my inner junior high school student for this, so it's my little lab book. So for the past 30 days, have been trying to put some of these principles into practice, and let's see how it went. Next page, please. All right, so a little background. I am in long-term recovery, 8 years. Although I feel comfortable in my recovery, I struggle greatly meeting my goals and completing necessary daily tasks. I used to hate it when people would tell me how good I was doing because I was sober. I still actually do have a hard time with that, recognizing that people say this with good intentions, but frustrated that it was assumed I had taken control of my life because I had stopped using. Next, please. So neurodiversity is a huge challenge for me, specifically ADHD and OCD, makes setting and reaching goals very difficult. I find myself in a negative feedback loop that leads towards procrastination and giving up. And I feel like I am always fighting time. This is a big one for me. Next slide, please. Okay, the abstract. So this is basically what we did in our breakout groups. So the kind of rules I set for myself was to identify one or two bad habits I would like to get rid of and one or two good habits I would like to adopt. So for the bad habit, spending excessive time on the computer and internet. This one actually turned out to be not specific enough. Um, so I don't really do anything like with my cell phone. Like I don't have like social media on it or anything. But I am on my computer all the time. But I also do all the work, like my work on the computer. I do like video editing and stuff. So it was kind of hard to separate because I'm on my computer being productive, but I also kind of like waste time on the computer too. So that I don't think I set as a clear enough goal. And the other bad habit was watching movies and shows before bed every night. And that's actually a pretty new habit. I haven't like watched TV in so long, but I for some reason just got a Netflix subscription. And Yeah. So for the good habits, write every morning. So that's pretty specific and straightforward. And then start and maintain a working list of SMART goals. Um, so this was a little vague as well, but I'll get into the kind of results towards the end. Next, please. Okay, materials and methods. So you guys should recognize this because we just talked about this. So for the first, I guess, kind of technique method I did was make it easy or make it difficult. So I live in a very tiny, I live in a tiny house basically. Like literally, it's a little one bedroom cabin. So this was kind of hard to do, but I moved some furniture around. So I actually moved my bed to the opposite corner of my room. So it's not in direct line of my monitor. So I like physically can't like lie down in bed and watch TV. So, I replace that with reading. And then I cover my main monitor before bed. So I had this bad habit of every morning I wake up, the first thing I do, I turn on the computer as I make coffee. So I cover that as hopefully like a sign in, a reminder. Yeah, it worked somewhat okay. But next slide, please. Okay, make it obvious. So for this, I put up a whiteboard in the cabin for listing goals and task lists. And then I moved my writing table so I literally and practically trip over it. This worked for like a minute. And now I still trip over it, but I've kind of just accepted the fact that I'm going to trip over my writing table every day. And it hasn't actually led to more writing. It's just kind of, I just trip over it every day now. But next. Okay, make it attractive. So, satisfaction from seeing lists completed. So that's kind of like the process itself is satisfying. Then motivation comes from always having a clear goal. I can picture what success looks like. Um, yeah, I think when I wrote this, I was a little bit more confident in the success of this experiment. But by preparing my space the night before, I can use the morning to write and enjoy my coffee. So again, that kind of comes down to time, this feeling of not having enough time, and then kind of the good results and the reward of that would being, to actually feel like I have time to enjoy things. Next slide, please. So the results. I spent approximately 1 month conducting this experiment. Was it successful? Did I adopt any good habits or stop any bad habits? If I were to give myself an honest grade, it would be meh. It happened. It wasn't a complete disaster, but yeah, that's about it. Well, yeah, next slide. We'll get more into it. So in conclusion, as I said, I would have been more successful if I had just really focused just on one more specific habit, which is what SMART goals are all about. Make it specific, make it actionable. I started out strong, but I tended to lapse back into my bad habits towards the end. I think we can probably all relate to that. And the biggest benefit of this was I have started to change my thinking and relationship with time. It's something that kind of had occurred to me is the relationship between time and self-care. Um, and for me, because I always feel like, I'm telling people I don't have enough time, telling myself I don't have enough time, feeling like I have never have enough time. But like upon examining that, is that really true, or is it just I just don't use my time wisely, so I feel like I'm always running out of time, So I'm kind of just really trying to kind of value time more, I'm reading this really good book called I forgot the name of the author called Someday is Today, and it's kind of all about valuing your time. I think this might be it, but next slide. Yeah, oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, yes, that was a very um kind of I ran through that very quickly. But so yeah, basically I didn't have a whole lot of success. I think my ADHD is it makes things extremely challenging. Like um it's simple things, that should just be like going from point A to point B. Straight lines I feel like don't exist in my head. It's all just like circles and running in circles. So I really, for me, I really need to just like slow things down, bring them back to their basics, and just focus on like one thing. So I am gonna actually keep trying at this. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I don't know if you guys have any questions. I know we kind of already had a lot of participation, but
So Troy, I just want to
yeah.
go back to say it took me 2 years of working with the fitness project to change the habits that I needed to
Mm,
recreate in my life, and I
yeah.
had a coach, and I feel like this is where the coaching comes in, right? Because you and I had talked after you went through
Yes.
this on your own and how difficult it was. Do you still keep your monitor covered? Is your monitor still at a place where you haven't that you're not watching
I
movies?
do. Yeah, I do. I
So
do.
that's success. That was like
Yeah.
one of your goals. You are not
Yeah. I mean,
watching
I just
movies
take it
that
off
night
and
when you go to
still like
bed.
do the original thing. The-
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah.
you had 100% success on one of your goals. And like you gave yourself no credit for it.
Yeah. Well, I keep it covered, but then I just take the cover off. That's the thing. So it doesn't actually lead to the behavior that I'm setting it up for. So it's kind of
But
like
you
it's
did
kind of like the writing table. Like I do it, but it doesn't actually do its function. But
but you can see where motivational interviewing could come in to
yes,
kind of draw out of you some things because
yes, yes.
because what I heard you say is that you moved it to a place where you're no longer watching movies in bed, which
Well,
was one of
yes, yes, yes,
which
yes,
was one of
yes,
your goals,
yes,
which you
yes,
achieved.
yes. So yes, yes, yes. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Allison?
You muted Allison.
So I am. I was just gonna say that I'm glad you had some success, and I had a friend that gave me some advice that might be relevant. Just like our brain is the thing that is putting an internal monologue, so we have to externally monologue and say like I did my goal. I had some success, but you have to out loud say, whatever it is, like I didn't watch TV today, or I have my TV covered so I won't watch it, or whatever, and like have it be something that your brain has to process instead of internalized.
Mm.
So just thought I'd share
Um, Yeah, no, thank you. Another thing that I do feel like this helped with, that's kind of like job specific of being, peer support. Where I am in recovery, I feel like, for long term, 7, 8 years, sometimes I feel like I forget what it's like. Um, I'm sure you guys have felt this, almost being like, sometimes feeling like we want change more than our own participants want change. I'm just like, oh, why don't you do this? Why didn't you do this? And sometimes I feel like it's easy to forget how hard it is to change. So it's like it's kind of like an exercise in humility, right? Um trying to make changes in our own life while we're, trying to guide people with making changes in their own life.
Yeah, and for those of you who are already coaches, grab an accountability partner at work or something, but because some of you are at the same centers, because I think about the coaching role. Troy tripping over his writing table, like I probably start unpacking that a little bit with motivational interviewing, to find out why is he having such a struggle with task initiation there,
Mm,
and as a coach, kind of dig into that a little bit. And then, as we would process through that in a coaching relationship, he knows he's meeting with me the next week. Chances are he's going to make a little bit of an effort because he
yeah.
knows he's going to be held accountable to somebody else. And that can help our participants as well.
Yeah, I like that. That's good feedback. Cool. Well, thank you guys for yeah, this was a lively group. I feel like it was good. And thank you, Michelle. Michelle's actually fighting some sickness, so she's been a trooper today.
Thank you both. Thank you, Troy, for sharing your story. Thank you, Michelle, for such an excellent presentation. and very motivating, and all the great interaction and discussion was really a great contribution to the session today. Well done, everyone. Now, just to close our session, we have a few final announcements. Be sure to visit nhtac.org to visit past COP recordings and resources. And I'm putting the link to an evaluation in the chat so that you can be sure to get your certificate for today. Just take a moment, please, to complete this brief evaluation. You can either scan, oh, here we go, scan the QR code there on the screen or click that link. And be sure to include your full name in order to receive the certificate. And again, thank you everyone for joining, the excellent participation, and we'll see you next time. Have a fantastic
Awesome. Well, to the COP train, I have to go. I have to go do an emergency transport, so I got to jump off. But thanks, guys.
I think the meeting will close.